Welcome to part 6, which is relatability. All right. This is super important, super important because so much of the barriers between you as a foreign man and her as a Japanese woman are going to be relatability. All right, if you're bonding with somebody from your own country, you're able to share your own past background. You're able to be like, hey, do you remember this or that from our childhood? And even if they lived across the country from you or in a different city, they're going to be like, oh man, like I totally do remember that. Like I totally do remember like Thundercats or Beast Wars or whatever from TV, or I totally do remember Lunchables or Fruit by the Foot or whatever. I'm just throwing out these old nostalgia things from my childhood, right? And if you're American, you'll understand those, and if you're not, well, maybe not. But the point is that culture is kind of a shortcut to relatability. But because as foreigners, we can't always take that shortcut. So we do have to spend extra time to focus on the relatability itself, on relatability with girls, both on our end, in other words, what we are expressing, and on their end, in other words, what we're understanding about them. Okay, so the first thing to say is just don't be a clown. Like don't clown around. You don't want to be the dancing and a foreigner monkey, which gets you very good responses, but as we've already discussed in this training, these sort of positive initial responses are not necessarily always good. Okay, we want to escape the token gaijin, or even gaijin blob box. I love this gaijin blob metaphor, because when you approach a girl in the street, she often, it sounds crazy, but she often doesn't even perceive you as an actual person, like a real person with desires and goals and values and blah blah blah, right? She just sees you as an amorphous blob foreigner, right? Foreigner is labeled there, and you're talking to her, right? And she's like, who's this foreign guy that's just talking to me? Okay, so you do need to escape from the gaijin blob, and you do want to end up usually it goes from gaijin blob, and then you become the token gaijin. She'll ask you all the standard pattern questions, going back to the other training that we went through, and eventually from token gaijin, if you can escape from this, what you want to do, you could totally actually go straight from gaijin blob to this, but what you want to end up in is attractive, potential mate, right? In other words, right? So how do we do this? So we want to display competence and knowledge about the culture, and this goes on a deeper level. Like if you just watch anime, like maybe that's cool, but you do need to have a deep interest in the culture in Japan. If you hate Japan, it's just going to be harder for you. So easy way to do this is like food. Find some music that you like, some Japanese music that you like. Find some events or some things that you like going to, some things you like doing. And this also can relate to like things that you dislike. So like going on the train and the Yamanote line at midnight, packed with drunk salarymen or whatever. Now you don't want to be that foreigner who's always complaining about how Japan's like sucks or whatever, and you also don't want to be that foreigner who's like in love with Japan and super wide-eyed like anime enthusiast. Although nothing wrong with anime if you like it. So you want to exceed expectations, which, and again, I did mention this before in one of the previous videos, but you want to ignore and laugh off the ridiculous low expectations for foreigners. The expectations are, again, that you can't use chopsticks, that you don't even know how to say anything in Japanese. So it's not hard to exceed these expectations, but at the same time, you shouldn't be all caught up in the praise of it. You should take it as your frame in this kind of situation should generally be one of course, I can use chopsticks. Like, what are you talking about? You can use a fork, right? And then just move on to a better conversation, a more interesting conversation that does not talk about what separates you, but what talks about what connects you, right? And what connects you is ultimately the fact that you are both human beings who are sharing a human experience, right? So being normal by Japanese standards, not necessarily foreign ones. So we want to just be seen as normal within the context of Japan, okay? And normal here, you can think of this as more similar to her previous, probably Japanese boyfriends than she had imagined, right? She should be surprised, and in her mind, she should have a moment where she goes like, wow, he's kind of like my Japanese ex, right? So, wrong way of doing this, the normal by Japanese standards, is the bara kanji, dude. If you guys don't know, like bara is rose, and very few Japanese people actually know the kanji for it, but some crazy like weeaboo foreigners have decided to take it upon themselves to learn all these like ridiculous kanji or old school readings of whatever that Japanese people don't even actually practically use. So don't be that guy. Don't be that like douchebag who knows the culture, knows certain weird specific things better than other people just because you think it's cool, right? It should be practical things that you know about the culture. You know, like for example, what blend of shochu is your favorite? You know, what province's meat you like, or you know, what special food from this province or that province you're a fan of, right? What genres of music like the common Japanese girl likes compared to girls that you like, right? All of these kinds of things are better examples than this bara kanji, dude, right? Things that are relatable. So an example is agretsuko. If you guys have seen agretsuko, I'll show you for a second here. Okay, so here we have agretsuko, and this is just a very sort of easy way to like start to relate to Japanese people, especially women here, as kind of normal, right? And relating to their culture in general. Let's look for a little bit here.
25歳独身さそり座の A 型すし詰めの満員電車に揺られて30分この会社で OL やってますさっ帰ろっと
ついでにこれもお願いねいやー助かるなうちの一個の写真見る
いいです
いいですレツコちゃん面白い
So this whole series is just it has a bunch of characters and it's just funny because it's a very realistic kind of, it shows and relates the emotions that this kind of girl would go through, right? This single 25-year-old female. It gives you all this information about her, and if you can start to think of these girls that you're talking to as like fitting into these kinds of roles, these kinds of archetypes, if you will, it's going to help a lot to relate to them. You know, you realize her struggle, right? She's an OL, right? She's ready to go home, and her boss is just like, oh, here, can you do this as well, right? And of course she has to say yes, right? So she gets angry and she vents in karaoke, right? So that's just kind of you know, if you can convey the fact that you understand the working person's struggle in this way, and especially Japanese life in general, because it's not painting it as some super glorious thing, but it's painting it a little bit more realistic. So if you can relate in this sort of way, it helps. It helps, right? All right, so that is about escaping the token gaijin blob box. You want to become more normal and ultimately be compared in her mind to a Japanese guy, a romantic, attractive Japanese guy that she has maybe hooked up with in the past, right? Because most of the girls are not going to be serial gaijin daters, although many will, and if you are, then chances are you're not going to have to worry about this stuff as much, although it will still help. Next is the 5 topics. These are 5 topics of conversation which will always be relatable and easy to communicate. All right, let's get into them. So the first one is fashion. Fashion in Japan is extremely prescriptive, which means that you know, the magazines and everything tell you exactly how to wear if you want to fit in with this group or if you want to have this particular look. Whereas people in the US dress to express themselves and to stand out. People in Japan dress often to fit in or to display that they are in a certain group or certain class, right? So it's very important. Once you sort of get the handle on how people look and why they're wearing what they're wearing and what it says about them, you can kind of make a lot of assumptions about them, you know, such as whether they're looking for a boyfriend or not, whether they're married or not, whether they're interested in foreign things or not. All of these things are really good. It's kind of like ammo that you can use to make assumptions, but also you can just talk about it, right? Music and entertainment is also huge. So music, you know, you should know what things like Visual K is or Johnny's or something like that, right? Music they have their followings. Is she the type of girl that likes foreign music, or or more Japanese music? What specific kinds of music, right? These things, they collect people in specific groups, and this is related also to fashion very heavily. Entertainment also is a sort of a larger bubble, but including especially TV, movies, celebrities, that sort of thing. If you can follow some people, follow some trends, follow some people on Twitter, dig up some blogs, and you can start to get into the world of the types of girls that you're interested in, whether those are like 18 to 23-year-old university and recent graduates, or maybe it's like 26-year-old like graduated cabajo girls. Maybe it's like hostesses, whatever it is, air hostesses, whatever it is. That subgroup of people pays attention to certain celebrities, listens to certain music, has certain fashion tastes, and beyond. Okay, food is very easily relatable. Obviously, everybody loves food. If you don't love food, I'm sort of confused and baffled, really. So talking about food is extremely relatable. Travel as well, and here it does not only mean abroad but also within Japan. Onsprings and onsens in Beppu or in Hakone or whatever. Going somewhere to see the fall leaves or the hanami or this national park or that national park, whatever it is. Travel is a big thing, and it's instantly relatable. And last but not least, relationships, and this one is really powerful. If you can get able to talk about relationships fluently and effectively, this can really catapult your game, right? Because it's directly what we're trying to do here. So talking about relationships is a kind of a shortcut or a hack to relating well to the girl, all right? And I don't have time to get into a little bit more into all of these, what they mean about the girls themselves and how to do them at the moment. But moving on into escaping the Justin Bieber effect. So what is a Justin Bieber effect? Well, if you imagine a concert where girls see Justin Bieber and they're like, oh my God, he's so handsome and amazing, and I'm just in love, and marry me, right? If he was to actually come out and meet the girl and be like, hey, what's up? You want to hang out? Like, the girl would probably be like, oh my God, and just swoon and die, right? Like pass out or something, be like terrified, right? Because while they like him from a distance, right? There is that distance, and that's part of the appeal, it's part of the attraction. So it's a kind of a weird idol like fantasy, IDOL and IDLE, right, together. So cool but distant. So they think of him as very cool, but in a distant sort of way, like they are the spectator and he is the performer, right? They are the person listening and he is the actor, right? It's a passive consumption of somebody who they think is cool, right? So you don't want this. You don't want this, right? It might seem like it's cool reaction, and going back to the reaction chapter, it relates a lot to this. But it's ultimately distant, right? There's a barrier between you and them if they put you in this category, which is why those initial positive reactions, if they're too strong, it can be leading down the path to the Justin Bieber effect, right? So you want to break the glass. How do we break the glass? Well, talking about relationships is a great way, and getting more real is a great way. So making things seem more normal and more real, right? Rather than idolizing you, right? If she's idolizing you, okay? This is going to help things transition really from that sort of this distant cool, he's cool, but he's distant, he's foreign, he's outsider, right? Category into, well, maybe I could actually see myself dating him, all right? Finally, we want to show her your world and understand her world, all right? These are two parts of sort of the same coin. You do have to show her your world. You have to express yourself, self-expression. Does she understand your interests? Are you explaining and relating what your interests and values are? A lot of guys don't share enough, right? And it's important to share enough information so that she gets a sense of who you are, all right? And your values too, of course. You should explain, what your values are, and either directly or through story. Okay. Understand her world. Last thing, understand her world. This is super big. This relates all straight back to empathy as well. So you want to get interested in order to be interesting. So being interested in the girl is the fastest way to have her to have her be interested in you, right? So creating the space where she can talk, right? Finally, you want to immerse yourself in materials which relate to girls of her type. So which show you her type. Immerse yourself in materials which show you her type. So this essentially what this means is get involved in the lives and the materials of the kinds of girls that you're going to be interested in going after, right? So that you can understand more about them. But barring that, like if you don't have time to do this, or if you don't want to make time for do this, just ask a bunch of questions. So get interested, right? Because it's usually like if there's a word like interested, you could flip it around to mean interesting. What does that mean? Well, if I am interested in the girl, she's interesting, right? I know this seems really obvious, but like let's say I'm bored, it's like I'm being boring myself, right? That's why I'm bored. Okay, it's kind of a weird philosophical kind of mind fuck there, but if you can get around and get into it and realize that if something is boring, so if you're viewing this girl as boring or you can't get much out of her, it's probably just you that is the source of this, right? You're not able to create a situation where she can really come out and express herself, and it does take time, of course. It does take time, but you can imagine yourself a little bit like Sherlock, a little bit like Darwin, rather, who went to the Galapagos Islands and started kind of typifying all these girls. So I'm going to draw a little bit on here. Let me see. So we got, like, let's say this is Japanese girls. We got Japanese girls, and then you say, all right, well, all these girls are the same. Well, that probably just means you haven't thought it out very much. So then you split it up. You're like, oh, Japanese girls, and we got type A over here and type B over here, right? I guess I could do this with actual circles. That would be a little bit nicer. So yeah, we got one, and then you can typify them into smaller groups. Like here we got one group, two group, and you're like, okay, here's gyaru, right? Or here's like blonde-haired girls, and they're all the same, right? And here's black-haired office lady type girls, they're all the same. Well, actually no, we got like, so we got all these other types, right? We got let's say it's we got real estate girls who are professional but quite different from actual office workers, office ladies. And then you got like cabin attendants who don't really wear suits, right? They have their own little thing going on, but what's common between them, they all did education, they all went to university, right? Here you have like gyaru, right? Well, girls who are blonde, who are gyaru, maybe you have like one group over here, like maybe these are nailists. They're blonde, but they're just nailists, or eyelash girls. Maybe there's models, right? Maybe there's race queens, and maybe there's kabakura, right? Okay. Maybe there's apparel girls, right? And what do these girls all have in common? Well, they probably didn't go to university. They might have gone to Senmon Gakko, but not university, right? So that's how you can start thinking of these girls, right? If you have one thing is all Japanese girls are the same, it just means that you're at this very shallow level of understanding. So you want to create assumptions, ask questions until you can kind of categorize them a little bit differently and start to understand them on a deeper level, and understand how all of these different groups, how they dress differently, how they think differently, what kind of guys they're looking for, what kind of music they listen to, all of those things. It's just more information which allows you to relate to her faster. All right, guys, that's it for this video, Relatability. See you guys tomorrow.